Vice Admiral Robert Lee Ghormley was an admiral in the United States Navy, serving as Commander, South Pacific Area, during the Second World War. Biography. Early years. Vice Admiral Ghormley was born in Portland, Oregon on October 15, 1883, the oldest of 6 children to a Presbyterian missionary. While attending the University of Idaho, he was appointed to the U.S. Naval Academy, in Annapolis, Maryland, and entered there September 23, 1902, graduating June 1906. He served on cruisers during the next 5 years, including the US West Virginia, the auxiliary cruiser US Buffalo, US Charleston, and the US Maryland. In 1911-13, Lieutenant Ghormley was aide and flag lieutenant to the Commander-in-Chief, Pacific Fleet, participating in the 1912 campaign in Nicaragua. That was followed by duty at the U.S. Naval Academy starting in June 1913. He was assigned to the battleship Nevada in June 1916. Ghormley was promoted to lieutenant commander on May 23, 1917, and spent most of World War I on the Nevada and as a flag aide. Late in the conflict, he was promoted to commander and became assistant director of the Overseas Division of the Naval Overseas Transportation Service. In 1919, he was awarded the Army Distinguished Service Medal for his service in this position. In 1920-22, he commanded the patrol vessel Niagara and the destroyer Sands, including Mediterranean Sea duty in the latter. Mid-career, promoted to the rank of commander in July 1921, Ghormley served as aide to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy during 1923-25 and as executive officer of the battleship Oklahoma for the next 2 years. In 1927, he became Secretary of the Navy's General Board in Washington, D.C. Captain Ghormley was Chief of Staff to the commanders of the battle force and U.S. Fleet during the early 1930s. After working with the Chief of Naval Operations, he became commanding officer of the battleship Nevada, the 25th of June 1935 to 23 June 1936. In 1936, he returned to the U.S. Fleet Staff. By 1938, he completed the senior course at the Naval War College. Rear Admiral Ghormley became director of the War Plans Division and Assistant Chief of Naval Operations, remaining in those positions until August 1940. He then was sent to the United Kingdom as a special naval observer for President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was subsequently promoted to Vice Admiral on October 1, 1938. Pearl Harbor attack, repercussions and immediate consequences. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, by the Japanese Imperial Navy using fast offensive carrier forces wrought devastating destruction on the American battleships there at anchor. This dramatically changed the strategic and tactical emphasis of the U.S. Navy for the rest of World War II. Until the attack on Pearl Harbor, the battleship was widely accepted and held as the supreme weapon of naval power. The attack from aircraft launched by carriers made it clear that air power had instantly superseded the battleship as the primary asset of naval power. In the days after the Pearl Harbor attack, the U.S. Navy attempted to immediately reinforce Wake Island, and in another mission sent Vice Admiral William Halsey, Jr. on counterattack forays on various enemy-held islands. In addition, naval intelligence had decoded transmissions indicating an attack on Midway, which if taken by the Japanese would have immediately threatened Hawaii. All of the pressing needs to protect and retaliate required the use of the few aircraft carriers then available, along with their escort and support ships. Into the summer months of 1942, The United States struggled on a shoestring to rush an offensive force consisting of the 1st Marine Division commanded by Marine Major General Alexander van der Grift and supported by 2 carrier task forces. The plan, called Operation Watchtower, was to immediately attack, seize, and hold the Solomon Islands of Guadalcanal and Tulungi, South Pacific Command assignment. It was into these critical early days of the Solomons campaign that Vice Admiral Ghormley was assigned command of South Pacific on the recommendations of Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief, United States Pacific Fleet, and Chief of Naval Operations Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King. It is possible that Ghormley was appointed to the position over other commanders with superior carrier and aviation expertise and experience, because of his association with President Roosevelt. Nimitz's choice was Admiral William S. Pye, but since Pye had recalled the Wake Island relief attempt, Admiral King was hostile to Pye. Vice Admiral Ghormley had last held sea command in 1938 on the battleship Nevada and had not been back to a sea command since, and, in addition, he had never commanded a carrier. Upon taking command as COMSOPAC, Ghormley had only Saratoga and Wasp for carriers. Vice Admiral Ghormley's performance appeared to be lackluster and pessimistic, as reflected in his continuing reports to Admiral Nimitz at Pearl Harbor, to which Admiral King took exceptional note. Ghormley had been directed through original operational orders by Admiral King to personally oversee the Guadalcanal, Tulungi attacks by U.S. forces, meaning he was expected to be on site or in the immediate area of conflict. However, Ghormley was either absent in the early planning phases and subsequent invasions or else holed up in his headquarters once he finally moved to Noumea, more than 900 miles from Guadalcanal. He apparently was overwhelmed by the quick developments of the overall operation as well as lack of immediate resources, paperwork, myriad details and petty political squabbling caused by New Caledonia's French government hosts, rather than being present in the immediate conflict areas. It was noted that Ghormley failed to set foot on Guadalcanal or to make himself visible to combat forces as a mirror presence. Vice Admiral Ghormley also conveyed weak or indecisive communications to his commanders and through his personal absence at critical planning meetings which could have settled vociferous arguments between Admirals Frank Jack Fletcher and Richmond K. Turner that occurred at the invasion planning meeting on Fiji Islands. The argument was over how long carriers would be able to provide air cover to landing forces and supply ships. Fletcher's main concern seemed to be protecting carriers and refueling needs above the immediate support requirements of the invasion force. There was also a morale factor involved with the Marines, who had felt abandoned on Wake Island after Admiral Pye had left them to be forced to surrender when he recalled the Wake relief attempt. Immediately after the Pearl Harbor attack, part of the problem was also due to attempting to interpret Admiral Nimitz's dictum against overexposure of carriers to attack unless more damage could be inflicted upon the enemy. Admiral Fletcher was left to interpret this rather than Vice Admiral Ghormley. Fletcher apparently was overcautious. The heated arguments aside, Ghormley had assigned Fletcher as the commander, expeditionary force who had overriding authority to move carrier air support out of the battle area. After only 36 hours, and with at least 2 to 3 days needed to unload supplies to the Marines fighting on Guadalcanal, Fletcher ordered carriers to pull out of the immediate, critical invasion operation, leaving many supply ships unloaded and vulnerable to Japanese attack and no carrier air support for ground forces. As a result of all these mitigating circumstances, problems and misjudgments, both Admirals Nimitz and King became highly concerned with the precarious state of the conflict and Ghormley's ability to command in a sound, manner. In consequence, Vice Admiral William F. Halsey flew to Noumea on October 16, 1942 to interview Ghormley and his staff. It became apparent to Admiral Nimitz that Ghormley and his staff did not have answers to serious questions that they should have had. In consequence, Admiral Nimitz had to make a personal appearance on Guadalcanal to bolster morale. Dismayed by Ghormley's shortcomings, on the 18th of October Admiral Nimitz replaced him with Vice Admiral Halsey, who quickly and decisively took leadership command and fully restored the balance of trust. Placing Halsey in charge demonstrated that the job had required a decisive, aggressive and trained battle carrier admiral, as Ghormley should have done from the beginning. Halsey had no problem with making frequent, numerous appearances and taking the lead. Final contributions. After a few months' duty in Washington, D.C., Ghormley returned to the Pacific to become Commandant of the 14th Naval District in Hawaii. In December 1944, Ghormley became Commander, United States Naval Forces, Germany, and served in that position until December 1945. He spent his last months of active duty as a member of the General Board at the Navy Department, and retired in August 1946. Vice Admiral Robert L. Ghormley died on the 21st of June 1958. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery, Legacy, a small park in Moscow, Idaho, near the University of Idaho, is named for Admiral Ghormley. Awards: Distinguished Service Medal, Legion of Merit, Navy Expeditionary Medal, Nicaraguan Campaign Medal, World War I Victory Medal, American Defense Service Medal, Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 1 Battle Star, European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal, World War II Victory Medal, Navy Occupation Medal.